Okay, so let's really knock up the complexity here. We're going to add some fractions and decimals. And again, the game plan is to simplify. And if you recall, that simplification also said to clear fractions or decimals. And then after we've done that, we're going to add and subtract. And then after that, we're going to multiply and divide. And then check our answers if needed. Right? But so simplification again is the key. And if you are very confident in your fraction skills and decimal skills, you can approach this just like we've been doing. You'll notice in terms of simplification, there are no like terms over here. So we can start moving some terms around, right? So that term has an x, and that term has an x. So we could actually start this by subtracting 1/4 x. But then I got to subtract fractions. We could also subtract 1/3 from both sides, and then I got to subtract fractions, which is very doable. I think we relearned how to do that in Chapter 1. I'm pretty sure your guys' skills are much better at it. But I'm going to use the fact that that equal signs, my friend, that equal sign allows me to do whatever I want and be okay, as long as I do it to both sides. So here's the little trick we're going to do here. To clear the fractions, so I don't have to worry about them anymore, I'm going to find my LCD. So when I look at this, right, the number that is divisible by 2, 3, 4, and 6 is 12. Everybody goes into 12 pretty cleanly. Now, in the past, what we were doing when we add and subtracted, I'd multiply by some form of 1, like 2/2, or 3/3, 4/4, and 6/6 to build equivalent fractions. But what I want to do is I just want to clear them. I don't want them anymore. And again, this equal sign is my friend. So what I'm going to do is take the 12, I'm going to write it as 12/1, and I'm going to multiply it to both sides of my equation. So notice I'm using my golden rule of multiplication. Whatever you do to one side, as long as you do it to the other side, you're okay. So I'm going to choose to multiply both sides by the LCD of 12. Now, of course, how does that help me out? Well, we now perform a distribution, and what we get is 12/1 times 1/2 x plus 12/1 times 1/3. Meanwhile, on the other side, we get 12/1 times 1/4, oops, forgot my x, plus 12/1 times 1/6. And as we perform these multiplications, right, we're going to get 12/2, but 12/2, that's just 6. So we're left with 6x. We're going to get 12/3, but 12/3, that's just 4. Here we're going to get 12/4, but that's just 3. And then 12/6, right, gives us a 2. And so I don't know about you guys, but this idea of clearing the fraction by using my multiplication property of equality, multiply the LCD to both sides, that's a pretty good option. Because I would much rather play my balancing act of adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing with something that doesn't have fractions in it. So the choice is yours. I prefer to clear them, so that's what you're going to see from me. But if you want to just work with the fractions and add and subtract them and move them around, be my guest. All right. So continuing on here, both sides now are simplified as they can be. So we're going to move to my adding and subtracting. Again, I like to collect the x terms over to one side. So I basically, the 6x is good, this 3x is on the wrong side. So how do I get rid of it? I subtract it. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. As we move along, this plus 4 is on the wrong side, so how do I get rid of it? I subtract it. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. All right, and so 6x minus 3x is a 3x. The 4's cancel out, the 3x's cancel out, and then 2 take away 4 gives us a -2. Multiplication division, well, I see a division here. All right, we're going to take both sides and divide them by 3. And so this gives us a final answer of x equals -2/3. All right, so to me, that in terms of an equation, when I have this this balancing act here, that equation is pretty powerful. I can do whatever I want to both sides. As long as I keep that balance, I'm okay. So I'm going to use that to my advantage to clear the fractions. So let's do that again in problem 2. So again, we have an equal sign. I'm going to use this power that I have. So I got to find my LCD, right? What number is divisible by 5 and 3 and 15? Well, that is 15. So I'm going to take 15 and I'm going to multiply both sides by 15. Alright, so that's what the work looks like when I literally multiply both sides by 15. I'm rewriting it as 15 over 1 so we can see it as the fraction rules. When I do my multiplications, I'm going to kind of cut to the chase here rather than breaking it up here. If you want to break it up, you can. But when I multiply here, 15 times 3, we get 45 over 5x minus 15 times 2 is 30. 1 times 3 is 3. So this times this gives us 30 over 3. Distributing over here, we get 15 over 3x minus, this is kind of a doozy, 15 times 7, right? That's a pretty big number, all right? But I believe, right, it's 95. Okay, although of course you can probably see the 15s cancel out anyways, all right? 45 divided by 5 is 9. 30 divided by 3 is 10. 15 divided by 3 is 5. And then 95 divided by 15, I'm going to make sure, you know, I think it's 105, I'm sorry. But whatever, it gives us 7, right? Because again, the 15s are eventually going to cancel each other out anyways, leaving us with 7. Let me check that out real quick. All right, 5 carry 3, yeah, it's 105, I apologize. All right, but 105 divided by 15 leaves us with 7. So you can either break down the little products this way to see them, or if you're real proficient with it, you can kind of do them in your head like I did there. Fact of the matter is I went from an equation with fractions in it to one without. And so now we're ready to solve. So we've simplified as much as possible. Now we add and subtract. Again, I like to collect my x's to the left-hand side so that 9x is good, that 5x is not. So I'll get rid of it by subtracting it. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. This minus 10's on the wrong side, so how do I get rid of it? I add it. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. So there's my balancing act. 9x take away 5x is 4x. The 10's cancel out. The 5x's cancel out. And minus 7 plus 10 gives us 3. Alright, now we're ready for a multiplication or division. And if I divide both sides by 4, the 4's divide out, leaving us with our solution. X equals 3/4. And we're off to the races. So we're looking pretty good. So clearing fractions, a really nice thing to use when solving equations. A very powerful tool. If that equation wasn't there, we'd be forced to use all our equivalent fraction stuff and work with the fractions. 3, again we have a fraction. If I just follow what we have, I'm going to find my LCD. And the LCD between 4 and 8 is 8. And so I'm going to take both sides and I'm going to multiply both sides by 8. Alright, so kind of keeping in line with what we did upstairs. And now when I do the little multiplications, on this side it's pretty clear, right? The 8's actually cancel out, leaving us with 3x minus 5. Over here, there's a little bit more going on. The 4 goes in itself once and the 8 twice. So we still have a little bit more to do over there. But I'd rather work with that than work with that fraction. Again, I was able to clear my fractions. Distributing, we now have simplified as much as possible. So we're now back to adding and subtracting. So again, I like to collect my x's over here. This 3x is in a bad spot, so I'll subtract it. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. This plus 2 is in a bad spot, so I'll subtract it. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. Cleaning this up, right, we have 3x equals negative 7. And then last but not least, I can get x by itself by dividing by 3, and this gives us a final answer of negative 7/3. Alright, so kind of a cool little trick there. So again, this constant idea of clearing a fraction by multiplying by the LCD. I'm going to asterisk this one. I'm concentrating on the idea of clearing fractions. There's actually another way we could solve number 3, but I will cover that in another part of our lesson. Moving on to decimals. Well, the first thing we have to recall is that a decimal is just another way of writing a fraction. 0.2 literally is read as 2/10. 0.05 is 5/100ths. 0.08 is 8/100ths. And 0.3 is 3/10ths. So when I see them in their fraction form, I can see that I'm basically back to the idea of clearing my fraction. I also can see what the LCD is going to be. Everybody goes into 100. So the best way to start this is to multiply both sides, I forgot to put a 0 there, by 100. Alright, multiplying by 100, that moves the decimal over, or you can just kind of, if you want to multiply by 100 up here with the fractions, you can kind of see that happening. Right, I'm multiplying everybody through by 100. So 10 goes into 100 10 times, so times 2, we're left with 20x. Right, here we're going to move the decimal over, the hundreds cancel out, we're left with 5. Here we move the decimal over, or the hundreds cancel out, 8x. Plus here the decimal moves over, comes to 30, or you can say 10 goes into 100 10 times, 3 times 10 is 30. Alright, so now we don't have any decimals. We cleared the fractions. We're back to adding and subtracting now. So perhaps I subtract 8x from both sides, and I subtract 5 from both sides. Right, there's a good balancing act, because that'll leave us, right, those cancel, and then 30, that gives us 25. And at this stage, dividing both sides by 12 would be a good move, leaving us with our final answer of x equals 25/12. So a great way to solve equations with fractions is to just flat out clear them. Find your LCD, multiply it by both sides. I know we can't totally avoid the fraction work, but at least I'm not adding them and subtracting them and all that crazy stuff. Again, if you choose to work with the decimals or work with the fractions, that's your choice. I'm pretty sure you can find videos where people just hammer away at them, and that's okay. You should get the same answers that we got here. But if it was up to me, and I'm trying to encourage you guys, that's why it's the only way I'm showing it, when you have an equation with fractions in it, clear the doggone things. It makes our life a little easier in the long run. Alright, we have another set of issues that we need to discuss, and we'll talk about that in the next video. Talk to you guys later.